no reality where any of us raise a kid who doesn't have a trauma or isn't having a limiting belief or pain and discomfort and challenges. That's part of life and it's going to happen. The most important thing for me is that she knows that I'm a safe place for her to process and move through those challenges. For the first 6 months, I was like, I used a tone and she heard me scream at someone and that's going to scar her for the rest of her life. It's okay, pump the brakes. What's more important is her seeing me as a human, her seeing me process things in a healthy way and showing her what it's like to move through these things, because at the end of the day, I'm teaching her how to be a human in this world.
Welcome to Intimacy Evolution, the podcast that helps you enjoy deeper connection and more intimacy in your relationships. I'm Brianna Carey, relationship and intimacy coach, and together with my husband Mark, a licensed professional counselor, we're here to help couples create the relationships they crave. Relationships evolve over time, and that's okay. Let's talk about it. Welcome, Scout Sobel, to Intimacy Evolution. I am super excited for our conversation today and to talk about all things being a new mama and an entrepreneur. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored. It's going to be a good conversation.
Please tell our listeners just a little snippet about you.
Yeah. So hello, I'm Scout Sobel. I am the founder of Scouts Agency. We are the leading agency in running podcast tours for women, which means that we get women as guests on podcasts to tell their story, get in front of new audiences, and build their business while becoming thought leaders in the process. Through that, we work with one-on-one clients. We have the Podcast Tour Academy, and we are launching our database soon to the public to subscribe as members. And on top of being an entrepreneur, I'm also a podcast host, About Cases podcast with my sister, which has got me into the podcast industry. In the beginning, we've been doing this for almost 5 years. I'm the author of the best-selling book, The Emotional Entrepreneur, which is the emotional guidebook to entrepreneurship. And now I am a new mother to a 6-month-old baby girl. So that's me.
I love it. I first heard you on the Simply Be podcast with Jessica Zweig, and you were sharing your journey. I think you were on tour for your emotional entrepreneur book. You had at least mentioned it, but you had mentioned that your journey with bipolar disorder and what you had to go through because the medications you were on, they said were not conducive to you conceiving.
Yes.
Do you mind touching on that just a little bit?
Yes. So I had a pretty intense journey with mental health. I had my first depressive episode at the age of 14 and was formally diagnosed with bipolar disorder type 2 at the age of 20, which now is almost 12 years ago. And I went through a very long healing journey, including a plethora of medications. I suffered from every sort of symptom, from depression to anxiety to catatonia, psychosis, paranoia, suicidal ideation. And it really wasn't until I turned about 28 that I really started feeling comfortable and safe in my emotions, and that I felt as if I could trust myself with managing this illness. And once I really felt safe and really took radical responsibility and ownership over my healing, my husband and I felt that I was strong enough to start to think about having a family. And I was on a medication at the time when we decided to start the conception journey. And it was the only medication that had ever worked for me. I'd been on medication for 10 years. Most of them were not working. They fucked me up even more. I did not have an easy trial and error journey with medication, but I finally found the one that really supported me in a really beautiful way. Unfortunately, that medication was newer to the market. And so there weren't enough case studies for me, in my opinion, that proved that it was safe during pregnancy and for the baby during pregnancy, just because it was so new. They hadn't done those clinical trials and studies yet. So with that information, I made the decision to go off the medication to conceive. Originally, I was going to go the surrogate route because my doctors and therapists didn't think that I would be able to handle going off medication and dealing with the highs and lows that pregnancy comes with. But I also made the decision to trust myself and my power. So I went off my medication and started my conception journey.
Thank you for sharing that. What were some things that came up for you as you navigated your mental health with your pregnancy? Was there anything, or had you developed a pretty solid routine that you knew when things were coming through?
It took me a year and a half to get pregnant, which I think is such a blessing because I had that year and a half to be off medication and showing myself and the world that I could be successful off my medicine. And so I was scaling Scout's agency in those year and a half. I launched my book in that year and a half. And so I think that since I had that year and a half, which I've actually never really realized until right now, you always realize in hindsight why things take a while or why things, you know what I'm saying? You realize what the reason is. And that year and a half not only allowed me to set up and scale my business to support me as a new mom, but it also showed me that I could do this without the medication, that I could be wildly successful and stable within my own life. So when pregnancy came, it was such an emotional, I want to say slap in the face, but I guess that's not the right terminology. I was shocked. I had a really difficult pregnancy. I was sick the whole time. They put me on anti-nausea meds just so I wouldn't feel hungover 24/7 at week 28 or 30. And so for me, it was a new challenge. It was a physical challenge. I had never had any physical sicknesses, any chronic illnesses, any physical disadvantages or disabilities or struggles. And so it was a mind fuck, to be honest. Like I was walking around town looking at every woman. We just do this. This is what this is. This is normal. I was like acting like I was the only person who's ever been pregnant, probably. So yeah, it was really difficult, but I knew that, especially running my business, I took every emotional challenge. I felt everything I needed to feel. I did not assign any shame to any thoughts that popped up along the way about what this means for me as a new mom. Do I want to be pregnant? Do I like, is this for me? Like I allowed myself, because there's so much mental health healing. I allowed myself the space to really emotionally deal with the changes, grieving my old past self. I was used to running at like 150%. And all of a sudden last year I was running my business at 30% capacity. And that was a major identity shift for me. So yeah, I believe my mental health tools really got me through that. And my mental health tools have gotten me through the early stages of motherhood for sure.
I just love that you shared that you did not assign shame to anything that was coming through, because I feel like that is a thing that women in general deal with. And then again, being a pregnant or new mom, we constantly guilt and shame ourselves for not being able to keep up with whatever society says.
Yeah, or just like acknowledging our fears in the whole process. I think that if sometimes what would happen was I would have a fearful thought, or I would be afraid that this wasn't for me, or I'd be afraid that I wasn't going to like it, or I'd be afraid that I wasn't going to feel like myself. All this fear would come up, and then I would shame myself for feeling the fear, because then you say, oh, does that mean I'm not loving my daughter enough? And this is all these things, when really it's just so natural. And the way to get to alignment where you're so present with your baby and loving your baby is for you to clear the fears and the shames and the traumas and all of the limiting beliefs before the baby gets here and while the baby's here, because it keeps going. But I believe that's the way, it's my way of getting to a point of raising my baby girl with intention and presence and compassion.
Yeah. I wish I would have been more aware when I had my kiddos. I keep telling my husband now, I'm like, we could try for just one more, because I feel like I'm so much more that's not going to happen. He has a vasectomy, but honestly, it's reversible.
It's kind of a blessing and a curse. I'm going to be honest with you, because I am so aware of that a baby's subconscious is made between year 0 and year 7. And I am, as someone who's so into the personal development and so into the mental health world, I realized in the first 6 months of having her that like, it was too much. I had to release perfectionism, because there's no reality where any of us raise a kid who doesn't have a trauma or isn't having a limiting belief, or like pain and discomfort and challenges. Like that's part of life, and it's going to happen. And I always remind myself, like, she chose me and her dad for this lifetime. And so whatever lessons she's about to learn, she's meant to learn. The most important thing for me is that she knows that I'm a safe place for
Yeah.
her to process and move through those challenges. And so for the first 6 months, there was a lot. I was like, I used a tone and she heard me scream at someone and that's going to scar her for the rest of her life. It's okay. Pump the brakes. What's more important is her seeing me as a human. And what's more important is her seeing me process things in a healthy way and showing her what it's like to move through these things. Because at the end of the day, I'm teaching her how to be a human in this world. And there's no amount of prep, there's no amount of conscious parenting, there's no amount of anything that will ever take away that reality of being a human, which is that it comes with pain and challenges.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that is so good. So true. You had mentioned that you did have some tools that you use. Can you share a few of those that you use to either just set yourself up for the day, or when you notice maybe you're having a tougher, challenging time? What are some things you use?
Yeah. So in the newborn phase, it was mindset. Like I was monitoring those thoughts all day long. As someone who obviously everyone was afraid that I was going to get postpartum depression, I knew that I had to be incredibly diligent in those first couple months. So I created a plan. My husband and I had code words that we had to use. We were able to tap out if we needed a mental health moment, stuff like that. I made a very big point to utilize at least one, if not all three of my main tools every single day, which is actually, there's just two main tools, journaling and meditating. That was like, I had to get at least one of them in. It didn't have to be 20 minutes. It could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but every single day in the newborn phase, I was like, starting when she was a week old, I pretty much got one of those tools in every day. Every now and then there was a couple of days where it didn't happen, but I was very, very adamant about that. When she was sleeping, because all they do is sleep in the first 2 months, what was I going to do that was going to nourish myself? Did I need a nap, etc.? So I was really intense about sleeping. I have basically gotten this whole time, even when she woke up every couple hours, I'd basically gotten in the early stages at least 7 hours of sleep, because I would take naps. I would go to bed at 7 o'clock. That was a priority for me, and I wasn't going to allow that to tip over, even if it meant like 4 hours here, 2 hours here, 3 hours here, etc.
Yeah.
And it really came down to mindset. I monitored those thoughts like you could never believe. It was like it was a ninja video game going on upstairs for me. So for example, it's 2 a.m. She wakes up and I am exhausted. And the last thing I want to do is get out of bed. I feel like a magnet. We've all been there. The alarm goes off. We're begging it to stop. I sat there and I would notice myself feeling this resentment, this please go back to bed. Please just go back to bed. Like I need sleep. And in those moments, whenever that would come up, I would stop myself and I would say, reframe this. My baby is 4 weeks old. She will never need me in this way again. She doesn't need me in that way right now. So it's emotional for me. She will never be in this way again. This is temporary. And the truth of this situation is that she will go back to sleep. She will. Yeah. And when she goes back to sleep, I will go back to sleep. But for now, I have the honor to be awake with her in a time where no one else is. And I get to feed her and rock her back to bed and be a mom of a newborn. And it's just that reframe. And then I get out of bed and I take care of her at 2 a.m. If I continue to be in that, oh, please just go to bed. This is so hard. I don't want to do this. Yeah. That compounds and that eats at you and that changes the next moment and the next hour and the next hour. So it was radical acceptance of the phase that I was in, the season I was in. It was not a commitment, a connection to the fact that it's not forever. In ththose moments, you think, I'm never going to sleep again, right? It's not true. Like in 45 minutes, in an hour, in 2 hours, in 3 hours, she'll go back to bed and you'll go back to bed. And so every challenging moment, any time I felt a bit of, I don't want to do this, please stop. I need whatever it was, I would take a minute and I would completely reframe, right? And then I would do like little things. Like if I had to feed her, I would spend an extra minute, even if she was crying, I would spend an extra minute setting me up with the things that I had. So I felt good and I had my stuff and I had my book or I had my this, you know what I'm saying? To make it everything more intentional and enjoyable. So I really put myself first through those moments.
That is so good. Thank you for sharing that because I think, again, I hear a lot of stories and I'm thinking back to our two kiddos and moments where you're just like dreading it. You're
Yeah.
exhausted. And then you also go through this is just me. I'm the only one going through this because we don't talk about it as much. And I know now, like in today's society, I see it on Instagram a lot. Moms are starting to share these struggles. So women aren't feeling so alone, but I love that you shared tactical tips that women can apply. It's okay. Yeah. Everybody's struggling, but what do I do? Because I don't want to feel like this. And so that's very tangible, applicable tips,
Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah. It saved me through the whole process and made me fall in love with it because I was able to
Mm.
have a more loving perspective in the challenging moments.
Yeah. And actually, because they change so much so quickly in that first year, those first
Yeah.
few months, even.
It's crazy. I was looking at her now as a 6 month and I'm like, you're closer to a toddler than a newborn.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, our daughter turns 4 next Friday, and I don't even know how that is possible because I still just see her as my tiny baby.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What were some things that came up like during labor, delivery, and like in the first few weeks after? Anything that like surprised you that you weren't prepared for, or how did you guys navigate that?
So I really wanted a vaginal birth so badly. I didn't have an opinion about the epidural because I had never done it before. So I was like, how can I make a decision if I don't know what it feels like? So
Yeah.
I was going to start with no epidural and then make the decision in the moment. I was really clear on that. And I really wanted a vaginal birth really badly. I wanted to feel the whole thing. I wanted it to be this initiation and the spiritual experience, as
Mm.
painful and terrible as I've heard it to be. She was like really breech. And so once we found out she was breech, everyone was like, flip the baby, here's what you're going to do. And you're going to do this exercise every single day for 45 minutes. And then you're going to get acupuncture twice a week. And then we're going to manually do the. And I'm someone who acts immediately when I know what's right for me. I'm very connected to my intuition. If I don't act, if there's any point of resistance, it's because it's not meant for me. And so I wasn't doing it. Like I was not doing my little downward inversions every day. I was supposed to do this moxa thing. I was like dreading it. And this woman I hired as a birth, she's a doula. She was going to be a doula in the room. She was helping me with like birth classes.
Yeah.
She was like, do this. And I was like, I'm not doing it. I don't know why. My body is just not doing it. And so I sat in meditations and I was really trying to figure out why I wasn't doing everything I could. And then I felt bad. I was like, am I not doing everything I can to flip her? Am I having a birth that's not the highest, quote unquote, whatever, natural, blah, blah, blah. And I felt a lot of shame and I felt a lot of pull from it, but I just had this inner download and speaking, like God really was saying, she's meant to be a C-section baby. Like I would have these meditations and I would just see her being lifted over the little curtain they do. And I just knew, and I felt like doing anything else was invasive and controlling. And I had been in control my whole life. I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm in control. It really was my first lesson in surrendering and not being in control anymore. And so I stopped everything. I was like, I'm not flipping her. If she flips, if she doesn't. And I actually just have seen through my meditations that before she came to me, made a contract to be born via C-section. Why? I don't know. I'll figure it out later. So I grieved the vaginal birth experience. I had it planned. I knew what day it was. There were so many magical things about it. First of all, it was the best day of my life. I was so calm. I had no anxiety. I was so blissful. And everyone kept saying a C-section is major surgery. It's major surgery. And I was like, everyone does it. So how major could it be? I went in so blissful and so happy and so calm. It was a beautiful experience. I had pictures of my husband's grandmas who had passed, my grandma who had just passed, and my stepmom who passed. And they were like, I could see them as I was laying down. And it was super weird. Like The anesthesiologist, for some reason, talked to us the whole time about his favorite Marvel characters. I think he was trying to distract me. I don't know, but I was just like, I let go. I was like, this is happening.
Yeah.
I saw her. It was insane. And I lost a lot of blood. So my husband was very scared and I was not. And they brought me back and I was like, you did such a good job and you did so good. And I'm so grateful, guys. Amazing job. This was like amazing. You should do it again. This was so great. I was like so blissful. And they're like, ma'am, you lost a lot of blood. We need to monitor you. And I was like, I know you're telling me that, but like intuitively, I feel totally fine. So anyways, it was a beautiful day. It was the best day. I had no trauma whatsoever. And then the next day hit and I couldn't stand up from my C-section. And I was like, what the fuck did you do to my body? And the realities of the surgery. And I don't like to talk about it so much because I don't want to scare anyone who is getting a C-section. People react very differently. For me, it was incredibly traumatic post day 2 on. It was a lot. It took me about 8 weeks to feel in my body. I remember looking at photos of other women and being jealous that they could walk and never feeling like I was going to be able to walk like them again. And I was afraid that like my incision was going to pop open. So I had a lot of fears and trauma around the surgery. And why I had the C-section, which is because, as I mentioned before, I'm someone who is incredibly, I think, type A and in control. And this knocked me off my feet, literally, like I couldn't move. And it really gave my husband the opportunity. He took 4 weeks of paternity leave and it gave him the most beautiful opportunity to take care of me and her. And I think that was like the most special way to start. God had to literally cut me open and put me down to tell me to calm down and surrender control and get taken care of. But yeah, it ended up being the best thing.
Yeah. And if that is not like the most, like, you talked about being initiated into motherhood, like you had to learn the ultimate, like to surrender. That is motherhood. You have to learn to surrender because these little ones, they are their own person and they will show you about it. They'll tell you about it. You can think, hope, dream, all the things, but then they come with their own agenda.
100%. And for anyone who's listening, who's pregnant, the birth feels like this thing that you can control. I think it's a disservice that we're doing to talk about this, like ideal birth and what do you want? And what is your birth story? Do you want essential oils and you want music playing? And I've never heard a woman's birth story go the way she planned ever. In fact, it's always turned out to be pretty much the exact opposite almost. And sure, it's good to be conscious and intentional and understand your options. This idea of a birth plan, I think, gets us really tripped up. And then it gets us we have to almost grieve this plan that didn't go to plan as if we were in control in the first place over this.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. I think what it would be really nice if we started focusing on the connection the mother has to self, because then, like you said, you were very aware that, okay, I would love to have a vaginal birth, but she's meant to be a C-section. Like this is all happening for a reason. So then that way you can mentally prepare for that aspect of it. And then taking away the ideal birth plan and just being more in tune to your thoughts, your movements, your energy that you are bringing into it could set a totally different course for women.
Amen. Amen. Like the amount of pressure and even like shame one feels around a birth, it's pretty crazy. And then when you think about it, my girl's 6 months and I never think about birth anymore. Like the point of the baby is that you raise the baby now. Like it's not the way, you know what I'm saying? It's really,
yes, it's that's their way to trick you back into having another baby. You forget about it. You forget about the pain and the experience. And then you're like, oh yeah, this was painful. Okay.
And it's not to say don't be informed and don't do your research. A lot of things that I made decisions on in the hospital and stuff like that because I did my own research. It's just more, it's okay if it's not what you think it's going to be.
Yeah. You've mentioned this a couple of times now about grieving a part of yourself or grieving an identity. I've mentioned this before in past episodes, but I would love if you could just share a little bit more on that of like grieving how you used to move as an entrepreneur that wasn't pregnant and moving through grieving your birth plan that you had. And what does that look like for you?
I think this was actually the biggest challenge for me in becoming a mom. I felt it every step of the way. I felt it in my first trimester because I was sick the whole time and continuing on. It was a struggle. Like it's been a fight, and I didn't go down easily. Like I was resistant to the facts for a long time that this was going to change me so significantly. And I remember posting on Instagram being like, any moms out there that can help me with the fact that I just want to work, but I can't right now. And they would all say, don't worry, take your time. This is, you're building a baby. And I'm like, if one more person tells me I'm fucking building a human, like I get it.
One thing I heard a lot over the course of my 15 years as a sexual health educator, and I spoke to thousands of women. The common thing that I would hear from them is how they don't even care to have sex anymore. It wasn't even on their mind. They know that they need to, air quotes, need to connect with their partner, but the want, the desire, the urge isn't there anymore. And I would look into their face and I would see the confusion, but oftentimes it was almost a look of, am I broken? It would just break my heart because I know that they had been experiencing this or feeling this for a very long time before they shared this with me. And I just want to share, ladies, you are not broken. It is something that is not talked about. And we don't realize just how much of all of our life experiences compound into whether or not we want to have sex or not. So I've created a space for women to come together, to connect, to learn, and to understand what is causing this lack of desire. It's an 8-week program where we uncover what is blocking your desire to want to have sex. So if you are wanting to reconnect to yourself, to reclaim your desire, to explore the depths of your own pleasure, then I invite you to check out Wanting to Want, where I will support you and a small group of women in unearthing what is holding you back and how to overcome that and how to start living the life that you are craving. We begin September 13th. Make sure to check out the link in the show notes. Go to intimacyevolution.com to learn more and to claim your spot. I look forward to seeing you there.
Like I know I'm building a human. For me, it was really about coming to terms with being okay with the fact that I didn't really want a part of me to change. Being okay with the fact that not working because I'm growing a baby or because I'm raising a baby doesn't feel good to me. I had to be okay with the fact that I am someone who did not want a lot to change, and then accepting the part that I can't control. Yeah, I'm an ambitious person. I'm a generator in human design. I love my work. This is not work to me. This is my life. I don't have such a distinction between personal life and work life because it is just a part of a bigger puzzle that is my purpose. And I think it's so interesting the way we talk about entrepreneurs versus artists, right? If an artist couldn't paint because of something, you would say, oh no, but she needs to paint. She should be painting. But if you say an entrepreneur needs to work, it can be perceived as toxic. When we talk about athletes, their overextension of themselves and their radical commitment is revered, but in entrepreneurship, it can be seen as hustle culture or toxic. And I had to come to terms with who I am. And who I am is someone who loves to build, is someone who loves business. I was afraid that would change when I had a baby, for sure. I was incredibly scared of what it would do to my ambition and to my career and to my business. And when I had her, I was still there. Like I was still there. I went back to work pretty quickly because I wanted to. Yeah. And I had to grieve the freedom and flexibility of what that looked like. So I remember being shocked at this idea that I can't like go to dinner anymore, or I can't just go somewhere and get a manicure on a Saturday, or there's so many things. Like I had to get home to the nanny and I'm like, when do I grocery shop? And that was the biggest change for me, was this idea that my sister was like, oh, I'm going to go to Palm Springs on Tuesday. I was like, I can't go anymore. And as an entrepreneur, I created this business for that freedom, and that's taken away from me in a way. It is. And so that's been the biggest logistical shift I've had to make for myself. So I allowed myself to grieve the part of me who could do anything at any point, at any part of the day. I grieve the part of me that has to do both things. I grieve the part of me that does not have 4 hours a day for self-care anymore. I am kind on myself when I see people on Instagram doing things that I know I just can't do because my baby goes to bed at 6:30 and I can't go to that event. And I've also been able, through grieving and through being really honest about how I think that sucks, because it does, I've also been able to find new clarity in my business. There's so many perks and pros to this, as I am incredibly diligent with my time. I'm at work, and that's potent. I am working. I am focused. When I'm at home, I am at home with my baby. I say no to a lot more things now. And as a people pleaser, that's incredible. So I've been able to strip the fat. Last year, I worked 30% capacity. I grew my business by 75%. It's no accident, right? Having her and taking away my time actually made me manage my time better and super speeded my results that I was trying to get to. So both things can exist at the same time. I can be not happy or feel daunting or feel trapped by the new schedule of a baby, and I can recognize the gifts that it has given me too. We can hold two things at the same time. It's being honest about both of them. So I've allowed myself to grieve and feel like a brat for being like, I can't go out because I have a baby. Just do it. Just let yourself be there for a second, because it's crazy. Like you wake up and you're like, what? How do I go to the doctors? Like, how do I do all these things? And then you hear from people who don't have babies who are like, I have time for myself, but you can't until you have a baby. It's just grieving that past self now, honestly, because I've grieved her so much. I don't even know who she is anymore. I can't even feel her or conceptualize her, or I look at pictures of myself. I'm like, who is that? But it's because I've allowed myself to grieve, say what I got to say, process what I need to process. Okay, this is the new situation. Here's how we're going to make it work times 100. And it's been incredible for me and my career and my levels of fulfillment each and every day.
I love that. I think that's definitely something that I struggled with a lot, having our two kiddos. Like I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years and I still felt like I had to keep up with everybody. I had to, but then nobody then talked about how they had nannies or they had people helping them. And so I'm like, I'm doing all of these things and trying to run this business. And I beat myself up a lot over it. And I don't know, just listening to you help validate that, because I would feel guilty too. I'm like, I'm a mom now. That's what I should do. And it's so validating to hear, no, I'm a really ambitious person. I love working because my work is not work, it's my passion, and I love helping people, and that's okay too. And there's a way for these to coexist together. But like you said, be diligent with your work time so that way you can really be present for your family time.
Yeah, Ed Milet said something, and he's quoting somebody else, but when I heard it, like I just started crying because it answered all of my fears around this. He said that the ultimate form of neglect is, and I'm going to paraphrase because this is not what he said and this is not what the original quote is, but the ultimate form of neglect for your children is to not essentially be your highest version of yourself, like someone who doesn't go after the dreams, someone who abandons themselves, someone who doesn't pursue what they're meant to pursue in this lifetime. Because I don't know about you, but I have a feeling I'm trying to raise my girl to know that she gets to live in her soul's purpose and her soul's expansion, whatever that looks like. Yeah. I cannot tell her that if I'm not doing it myself. And the biggest mistake that I think I could ever make as a parent myself is to become a martyr and to abandon who I am in pursuit of raising her. I am a better mother When I go to work, I come home, period, end of story. Whatever you have to do to be a better mother is the most important thing. Your mental health is the reason why your children will grow up happy and feel loved and supported. If you abandon yourself, I don't care if you're not crying in front of your child. I don't care if you're not screaming in front of your child. They will feel it emotionally and energetically. The best thing you can do as a mom is to take care of you. Whether that means you go away for a night every couple weeks for a spa day, whatever, whether that means you go to work, whether that means you stay at home with your kids, whatever it means. There's no formula for what that means. It's your formula. I just have felt the difference. I have felt the difference from when I'm abandoning myself and my mental health is shitty. And I do not want to be around my baby when I'm like that. It is not good.
Yeah.
But I'm lit up and I've taken care of myself and I'm meeting my needs. Her and I are so connected and have such a good time. So I don't know how I ended up on that rant, but it's important.
Yeah. So important. Thank you. You had also mentioned some of the things that like came up for you after you had her was like this shift, this almost dynamic, like, how do I do these things? What are some relationship dynamic changes with you and your husband? Because that's what I hear a lot of women. They're like, you have this baby. Anytime you add an extra person into a relationship, things change, but we don't logically, we know, but to experience it is different. So how do you navigate those changes now?
A lot of communication. It seems as if life just started going on and I was like, wait a minute, I need a new level, a new type of communication at home with my husband, with all my support systems, because there's such a bigger logistical layer we have going on here.
Yeah.
My husband and I navigated it, and it was, of course, it's challenging to have that type of a pivot in one's relationship or a dramatic change in one's relationship. But something that has been so helpful for us is that we check in every Sunday. So we do a couples check-in, how we're feeling, what we're grateful for the other person, and what we have coming up that week. We can logistically plan and manage. I have a heavier week this day, or I have a heavier day this day, or I'm going to leave early for work this day. Can you watch her early? It's honestly like a moment by moment logistical scheduling operation that is having a baby.
Yeah.
So it's being overly communicative and to be gentle on yourself, because you're each going through separate transformations and then you're going through a transformation together. And so it is the only thing I can say that has been so amazing is overly communicating the small details that come with raising a baby. And that weekly check-in has been really great for us.
Oh, that's so good. I love that you mentioned that. We talk about that a lot, is doing those weekly check-ins. It's super important just to stay on the same page with each other and for each person in the relationship to feel supported and heard. I joke that the only date a guy remembers is a 6-week appointment. What? Yeah, after.
I don't know why that took me so long. Okay, yeah.
But that is something that comes up a lot after having a baby. It's, again, not talked about. How to get back to intimacy after you have a baby. How do you navigate that? Was there anything that kind of threw you for a loop?
I think for me, it was feeling connected to my body again. Like I was talking to someone and I said, I have to re-meet her because she's been belonging to someone else. And just that idea can ignite some shame and trauma that maybe was stored. It's a weird concept, right? And so for me, it was knowing what I had done. I felt really powerful around that. I felt incredibly strong and in awe of myself. And I felt completely insecure and not like myself and not beautiful a lot of times in my postpartum journey, as I know so many women do. It's so fragile. So I would say that be okay with that fragility, be okay with that. Come back to what your body did as much as you possibly can. And ever since I've been postpartum, I don't have it today because I had a scheduling mishap, but I get a blowout every week in the early stages. I know this might sound surface level, but it's like you do what you got to do. I got a blowout every week and I got my nails done every 2 weeks and I got my eyebrows done every 2 weeks. Just so that I could feel as if there was a part of my physical appearance that I felt good about as my body was changing so dramatically and drastically. That allowed me to feel good as a wife and as a partner, right? But I would say give yourself that time. Like it takes time to get back into that. I felt so connected to my husband from the very beginning that she was born as a postpartum woman and as a pregnant woman. I did feel very connected to my husband, but it's also a completely different type of connection. And it's not a different type of connection. It's a different inner journey that you have with yourself during those moments. So be really graceful with yourself. It's a process, and if getting your hair done makes you feel sexier or buying new clothes, I was like, oh, I'm just going to wait until I fit back into my clothes. No, go buy things that make you feel good. And that's going to help you feel so much more back to your body. I think that when we talk about intimacy and relationships post baby, I think the most important work you could do is actually getting yourself back to feeling connected within. That's the work. That's the work first.
Yes.
And it's ongoing. I'm only 6 months postpartum, and I'm still in it, and I'm still doing it. Still re-meeting. I stopped breastfeeding last week. I'm in a taking care of me mode.
Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, because I think it is so easy, and I see it so much, that women start putting the focus on their partner and thinking they have to get back to duties, so to speak, rather than connecting to themselves first and then fostering that connection with their partner and seeing how that goes. And it's a journey. It's a challenge. It's not, you just had a baby 6 weeks later, you're good to go. It is.
No one's good to go 6 weeks later. No one's good to go 6 weeks later. And I think that when you have a baby, and I don't know exactly how to say it, so let's see how this comes out. It highlighted to me the differences between the genders. It really did. The amount that women carry, and you, to bring a family member, to bring a daughter and a son into this world is fucking ginormous. It is not for the faint of heart. It is not some quick thing. And so all that we do, take your time.
Yeah.
Connect with you. That's the most important part. And know that when you and your partner, if you are talking like a heteronormative straight relationship, when you and your partner are good, also the family's good too. So it's also that balance, right? Like I always come back to, I'm Jewish and I don't study the Torah necessarily, but the Torah says that it's actually your partner that's the most important thing, and then your baby. And it's, in the beginning, it feels biologically the other way. As a mom, you just gave birth, you're like, no, this little baby. But there's a reason why that is sage wisdom that goes back so many years, that many cultures and religions believe in. You and your partner are the most important thing, and then the children.
Yep. 100%. We talk about that as well, because that's where we see a lot of couples that start to become disconnected, is when they start placing their children first above the relationship. And then they get to be empty nesters and they're like, wait, we're roommates. Who are you? Yeah. And that is just the saddest thing for me to see. And so just helping couples to navigate that journey after they have the baby, so they can enjoy that time, that the family you created together.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
It's the best thing ever that I always think. It's every time my husband does something so meaningful, I just snapshot it in my head and tell him how amazing it is. I remember I took Lily to LA for a couple of days, and when I came back, he picked her up. He said hi, and he said, "Oh my gosh, you're more beautiful than you were 4 days ago when you left." And I just watched him say this to our baby girl, and I was like, oh my God, like my husband and my daughter, he's so meant to be a dad. It's insane. And it's just like when moments like that happen, take a moment and feel them, and brag about them, and tell them how beautiful that was, because those are the things that you guys connected in this thing together, because you're teammates in it too. So
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That is so beautiful. Oh, this has been such an amazing conversation. Is there anything else that you would like to share or anything coming to mind for you?
I just think the last thing that's calling on me is to try your hardest to not shame yourself. I promise you, if you had a thought, a bunch of other moms have had the thought. That's what I've had to really come to terms with, and that your journey does not have to feel like this easy, beautiful connection 24/7 in your purpose thing, because no one's purpose and nothing good in life comes like that. And so when the challenges come, when the weird thoughts come, when the grief comes, when the frustration comes, just feel it, because it's normal and it'll get you back to the reality of your life, which is that you have a beautiful baby or a kid, a beautiful partner, and all of the other blessings in your life. And it's okay if for a moment you need to feel the other part of all of this, because that's going to get you back to the reality much faster.
Oh, thank you. That is a beautiful way to round this out. Scout, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and your wisdom. And can you please tell our listeners where they can find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Scout Sobel. There you can find my book, my agency, my podcast, all the things. So come hang out there. And thank you so much for having me. This was a really beautiful conversation.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming on, and we will see you all next week.